Hi everybody, it's Nikki Chanel here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now today I wanted to do this video completely natural. I had a shower and I've done my skincare. I went and got my electrolysis done earlier, so that necessitates me being natural. Now today's video is going to be dating as a trans woman. And I'm gonna shock a lot of people that say, I'm a complete virgin, I've never been on a date. That's the video. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Have a good day. Okay, now let's get back to the real video. Now, while it is true that I've actually never been on a date, never dated anybody, never got a kiss, and I am a complete virgin when it comes to sex, I want to talk about some of my experiences dating. Now, dating I could classify in about 3 categories. Pre-transition, like, high school, middle school, kind of when people start dating. Then in kind of like my college years where I was just like a cross-dresser all the time. And then finally now as a trans woman. So that is what I'm going to be talking about today. And there's going to be a lot of nuances to this part, but this topic is pretty easy for me to talk about. So this should go pretty well. Now, as always, please like and subscribe, put those comments in the comment section, and let's get started. Now for my first topic, let's talk about my formative years of dating and kind of like sexual experience. Now, in my formative years, I went to public school. My parents didn't believe in charter private school, and I went to public high school in the more affluent neighborhoods of Boise, specifically Eagle. So if any of you know Eagle High School, that's where I went. Now, with me, in my earliest years, I think I can remember the earliest time that I ever said I wanted to be a girl was about age 8 or 9. That was in elementary school, because I started having gender dysphoria, as I talk about in this video right here, at about 6 years old. Now, when I got into high school, in middle school, I think I saw the first couple like holding hands at about 6th grade. I think that was the first time I ever saw that. And then when I was in 6th grade, I thought that the normal thing was for boys to date girls. And, since I was a boy, didn't really know anything different, didn't discover what transgender was yet by this point. Since I was a boy, it was like, okay, my role is to date women. That's what I thought of in 6th grade. And so when I bought flowers for a girl in 6th grade, I think her name was Jackie or Taylor, one of the two. I think it was Taylor. I bought her flowers and she said, thank you for the flowers. And that was kind of like it. And I never really thought anything of it because I was like, oh, okay. It was just, trying to be like a nice thing. I realize now that I liked her aesthetic that she had. She had this beautiful demeanor to her. She was gorgeous. And I didn't really view it as I wanted to date her. It was just more like, hey, I want to be your friend because you seem really cool and nice and pretty. And during high school, you started to see a lot more relationships. A lot more relationships started kicking in. A couple of my friends had girlfriends. I was a really quiet kid, so I kind of hung out with the quieter kids. We weren't like the high school rejects. It was more of we were the quiet kids that were from good neighborhoods, but we just couldn't really talk about it. We were just really quiet and we just really didn't have much social skills because, I had Asperger's syndrome and it was also going home and cross-dressing every single night, basically. And I remember there was this one girl and I think her name was Justine. She was really nice. And I think now that I look back on it, she might have thought I was cute because I like to think I was a fairly good looking male. I'll throw up a photo of me around 19, 18 right here. I thought I was actually a pretty good looking male personally. I had good facial structure, good bone structure. I was tall, I wasn't fat, I was skinny. I was also a track runner in 7th and 8th grade. And so maybe she felt attracted to me, but I was just too in my shell and too in this thought process of I want to be a girl to really kind of notice it. And so high school kind of came and went and I never had a dating experience because I knew what a gay boy was. I knew what being gay was by about age 15, 16. But in my high school, it was very traditional, hella Mormon population, hella LDS population. So being openly gay wasn't really a thing that happened at that high school. And I think looking back on it now, if I would have been more open and more honest with myself, I probably could have had a gay relationship, but it just wasn't something that really was at my high school. But as I'm going to talk about in the next section, I don't even think a gay relationship would have been for me personally. Now, after high school, I went straight into Boise State, go Broncos. I went straight into Boise State at, I think that was 2015. And I also got my first job at this time working at Macy's department store on the receiving dock. That was my first ever job. Now, going to high school and then going to college was a big jump. Like, college kind of felt like an extension of high school at the very beginning. Like, I knew a lot of the people I went to high school with because, you know, everyone just kind of goes to Boise State. They have like Boise State has an 83% acceptance rate and a 51% graduation rate. I actually just looked that up like a couple days ago. And it felt like high school for the first little bit. I didn't live on campus, I still lived at home, and my parents just made me drive there. They weren't gonna pay for dorm living or anything like that. And living with a bunch of guys that were around that age probably would have been weird for me. It just would have felt weird, I think. And at my first ever job, I started meeting gay men. I started meeting gay men at this time, and I was very quiet by this point. Like, transition really allowed me to come out of my shell, and I was really quiet at this point. I was a closet cross-dresser all the time. I was buying makeup all the time, started interacting with the girls, started kind of being seen as like one of the girlies to a lot of them, as like one of the girlfriends, basically. And so like, by this point, I knew I was definitely not into women from a dating or sexual preference. I was into men. I was definitely into men. Like, I was hella into men. Like, men are cute, I'm just saying that. And I started meeting gay men at this time. And there was this one guy, he worked in the juniors department, you know, age group and all that. And I started texting him, we started sexting, we started doing all that stuff. And I remember when he was like, you know, hey, I wanna, you know, do it with you. I'm like, oh, can I wear heels? And he's like, no. Okay. And I kind of realized at that point that, for me at least, having sexual relations with a man as a man wasn't what I wanted. Like, it wasn't what I wanted. Like, to me, being male and having relations with a man would have felt weird to me. Like, I felt like I couldn't do it. Like, I could not perform that role. Like, I was a bottom through and through. Believe me, I was definitely a bottom. But I just couldn't really perform that role. And I ended up never having relations with him. And I joined a group at Boise State of, you know, LGBT, kind of meet some other people. And I just kind of left it after like a couple of weeks. So it just didn't really fit what I wanted to be. And I think it was about 22 that I started realizing, well, maybe I'm transgender. Maybe I'm transgender. Maybe I want to be a girl. And I was cross-dressing all the time by this point. And I started talking to like the gay men in like my community, and they're like, well, I don't want a girl. I want a man. I'm like, huh. And I started putting two and two together that like gay men aren't into transgender girls. But I also started posting pictures to Instagram and Reddit and Twitter by this point. Like, some of my Instagram pics are really old by this point. And I got a lot of hits from men, like straight men. And that's when I learned about the transgender fetish, and that's when I learned about a lot of like transgender-like sex, basically. I found porn by this point and all that stuff. And I started realizing that like, okay, maybe this is more of what I want to be. Now we come to being transgender 4 years in, from March 18th, 2020, there's a photo of me. Now, I noticed that my body started to really develop male about 2.5 years into transition. It was 1.5 years on HRT by that point. And I started noticing like, you know, the feminine body coming in, like the curves started coming in, fat redistribution, my hair was getting longer, my skin was very softer, and I started having a little bit more of a chest. And it was at this point that I started noticing men looking at me. Not as in the way of like, I wanted to harm you, but as in a way of like, oh, she's cute. And I also got my first ever boyfriend at this time too. It was a long distance relationship. He was really nice. But it was after about 1 year or so of like, especially learning more about transgender and kind of like hearing about the transgender fetish, that I experienced it for the first time. I noticed that a lot of the men reaching out to me were really adamant about getting me in the bedroom. They were really adamant about getting me in the bedroom to satiate their fetish. Now, what is the transgender fetish? A lot of men are curious about what the male anatomy is like from a sexual perspective where they are the bottom. A lot of them they want to experience it. Now, but they don't want to do it with a man because that's like having sex with a man, that's considered gay in their eyes, and to them that kind of kills their straightness vibe. Like they're into women 100%, but they want to try out male anatomy. And they view transgender women as the ability to experience male anatomy because they view me, I'm going to talk about me specifically, they view me as more female than male. There's like a certain like threshold that you hit in their minds where they're like, oh, that's enough of a chick that I can suck her dick. And that's the problem with dating now, is there's a lot of transgender fetishers out there that just see you as like a fetish, that see you as their ability to understand the male anatomy. And I've talked to a lot of transgender women, and some of them have some pretty hardcore like issues with that, where they have had relationships with men that they thought were the one, and they just wanted to use them as a fetish, and they felt like used and abused basically. And that's kind of a brutal fucking thing if you really think about it. You know, to have this guy be like, hey, I want to have relationships with you, and then it's like, oh, he just viewed me as a fetish and he left me in the dust basically. And then went to the next guy, and it was the same thing. I know transgender girls that are pretty sexually active, and they've had a lot of issues with that. They've had a lot of issues with transgender fetishes. Me, I'm not gonna fucking do that. I don't give a shit about those motherfuckers. I could care less about them. They are fetishers, and I will leave them as fetishers. Now, with me, the relationship that I want is with a man who is fully comfortable being with a transgender woman openly. Because there is that whole ability of like being stealth. I don't really believe in that. I believe that this should be an open relationship, that their family should know that I'm transgender. Their family should know that yes, I am a badass fucking bitch, but I was also born a dude. And that's to me what I feel. And a lot of them have kind of issues with that, where they kind of want to hide it. And it's kind of funny. One guy I was talking to, he had an issue with that, where he had almost as much issue as telling his parents that he's dating a trans girl as I did when I told my parents that I wanted to transition. It was kind of an interesting dynamic looking at that. And now it's kind of like I'm just kind of like dating and hoping to find the right guy, because I want a guy that is my world, my intimacy. I can be fully embraced with him, and I can be myself around him, but I don't just want to have sex. Like, to me, sex doesn't really interest me. Like, in a manner with the right guy, in the right situation, everything works out well, that would be amazing and wonderful. And to me, that would be union of two souls together. That to me is what sex and intimacy is. But haven't met that guy yet. And at this current rate, I'm just waiting for it to organically happen, and who knows when that's gonna be. Now, I also thought to include this section of what are my views on sex. Now, for me, sex has never been like the priority in my life. I am 100% virgin. Like, I've never had any relationships where I've even touched a man or a woman in any way, shape, or form like that. Like, the closest it's come to is like giving like a guy a hug, and that's the closest it has ever come to. Now, I view sex as not the initial thing. I view sex as the culmination of multiple steps of dating. To me, it's finding the right guy, building common interests, building a connection through like video games, history, and whatever they're into, like building a connection through that. After that, it's about meeting and going out for the first couple of dates, you know, having a fun time, things like that. And then as we just get more comfortable with each other, we start kind of going from there. And to me, sex is like 4 or 5 steps down the road. It's not the first thing. Now, there has been a guy that I've been talking to, and he's really awesome, where if we ever meet in person, it probably will be a sexual encounter. But for me, at least, there's also a lot of stuff to do, because you have to have, my only way to have penetration is through the mouth or through the bottom. And the problem with the bottom is you have to clean it. You have to make sure that it's clean. You have to make sure that there is that there's no issues going on there. And is also being complete virgin. It's a muscle, so it's very contracted. And so you have to expand that muscle. That takes time. that takes time and a lot of practice. Otherwise, you can literally break that muscle. That's the problem. And this is getting like kind of risque talking about this, but I kind of thought to include this mention that it would be a full-on encounter. Like, to me, it would be a really wonderful encounter if that ever happened, but at this rate, I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. And I'm only gonna have sex in the future with a person that I could see as like a potential husband for myself. I don't view sex as like just something that I need to get out of the way. To me, it's gonna be with a person that I truly love and admire. Now, thank you for watching this video where I talked about dating as a trans woman. Now, as you can see from this video, that being transgender does not automatically mean your sexual preference is geared towards men. I am into men because I think male anatomy is gorgeous and sexy personally, and I think some men are good looking too. And if you're transgender and into women, hey, you're into women. That's all good. Do you and love what you do. Now, on my own preference, I will eventually find the right guy. I will not find a guy who treats me as a fetish. I will beat the shit out of that guy if he treats me as a fetish during sex. I'm not gonna lie. I will beat the shit out of him if he does. And I am at the point now where I will find my guy in the future, and I will have my first ever intimacy encounter, and it will be amazing. And it will be with someone that I truly admire, and it will be a union of two souls in that moment, in my opinion. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing ever, is when two people who are truly in love with each other have that first ever connection, and it's gonna be amazing. Now, as always, please like and subscribe. Leave those comments in the comment section. Let me know if you have anything you would like to add to this video, or if you would like to suggest topics for more videos in the future, please let me know. Now, this has been Nikki Chanel, and have a wonderful day.